Welcome, everyone, to Introduction to GENESYS 7.0, presented by Mark Malinoski. My name is Donna Long, and I will be your host during today's webinar. Mark is a technology and business manager with more than 30 years of experience in engineering, marketing, and general management. His expertise is the development and launch of leading-edge technology products to global market segments. Mark has been part of high-tech production and metrology equipment firms such as Schlumberger, JDS Uniphase, Advantest, and Tektronix, and has spent 10 years as an independent consultant. As a technologist, Mark holds 6 patents and has been published in major technology forums. Before Mark gets started, I have just a few housekeeping items. We will be answering questions at the end of the webinar. Please send your questions in as soon as you think of them through the question tab on the webinar control panel. Mark will answer as many questions as he can today, but if we do not get to your question, we will reach out to you after the webinar. The webinar is being recorded. If you experience connection problems during the live presentation, a recording will be made available within 1 business day. The recording will be published to Vitech's webinar archive, located on our website. At the conclusion of this webinar, a survey will open on your screen. Please take a moment to give us feedback on today's presentation or on what topics you would like to see covered in future webinars. Now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mark. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Donna, and thanks for everybody's participation. This introduction to GENESYS 7.0 is leveraging our drive to enable MBSE 2.0. If you've participated in any of our recent webinars or viewed any recent blogs, you've heard us describe this drive to realize MBSE 2.0 performance. That has helped to prioritize some of what we've added to the feature set of GENESYS in GENESYS 7.0. So let's do a quick review of what is MBSE 2.0. When we describe MBSE 2.0, we're talking about the performance of enterprises that deliver target systems of interest to their clients. MBSE 2.0 is a much more concurrent and connected form of enterprise performance. It realizes a system design and a system architecture early in the product life cycle, and then it continues to evolve as the enterprise works to deliver that target system of interest. It ties together all of the systems engineering teams, the detailed design implementation teams, and all of the support teams in the organizations, and oftentimes stakeholders and organizations performing in the supply chain. This aspiration for MBSE 2.0 performance is necessary because of the increasing complexity of our systems and the pressure that more siloed types of organization structures are coming under. Now, to realize MBSE 2.0 performance, we have to achieve a commonality of systems engineering practice and consistency of data structure to tie the different teams in the organization together to the system design and system architecture. So what the foundation of MBSE 2.0 performance becomes is the systems metamodel. Now, the systems metamodel is an information template or a roadmap to realize and describe systems. It needs to be industry proven such that it's known to have the semantic strength and the scope to describe all types of systems in various walks of industry. It needs to be implemented in natural language, so we don't need specialized skills and training to read syntax in the system description. It connects the enterprise by instantiating in enterprise class databases such that the schema can house 100% explicit data representation of the system design and then becomes accessible to all parts of the organization. So in GENESYS 7.0, we've leveraged off of the long history of development of the systems metamodel from core, then moving into GENESYS, because it is industry proven, is in a natural language, and does have the ability to connect the enterprise. So let's look at the new feature overview of GENESYS 7 and how we've prioritized enabling MBSE 2.0 performance. One of the major realizations of capability in GENESYS 7 is enhanced connection with physical analysis tools. We've enhanced we've added a connector for the Phoenix ModelCenter MBSE, as well as expanding the interaction with Simulink. We won't be touching on the Simulink interaction specifically in this session, but what we've done is enabled the direct representation of the GENESYS diagrams in the Simulink desktop. We will be going through the new connector for ModelCenter in some detail. We've also added new model management and configuration management capabilities to enable the enterprise to share knowledge and know-how in systems design. That will allow for reuse of patterns and library components. It will provide the capabilities to realize desired configuration management approaches. And we've also added an alert framework that can notify users when selected aspects of their systems designs change. There's also some notable usability features in terms of controlling the frame block in diagrams, enhancements to spell checking, some additions to the reporting toolkit that we'll cover. So the new Phoenix ModelCenter connector for analysis. This is going to be a fairly light touch on this topic today. We'll be doing a more in-depth webinar on architecture trade-off analysis in the future. But for today, we'll highlight that GENESYS 7 has a new utilities tab added, and we've moved or collected the connectors underneath the utilities tab. Now, what we'll explain in a demonstration video is how we took a model of a braking system and used the connection between GENESYS and ModelCenter to actually calculate the braking distance of the vehicle that has that braking system in it. So we'll briefly describe the model, we'll invoke ModelCenter, we'll do the calculation, bring that data back into the design settings of the parameters of the vehicle component. So let's jump over to the demonstration video. You can see in the model in GENESYS that we have a structure of the components of the vehicle, as seen here in the block definition diagram. With it, we have associated constraint entities, and we'll be referring to some of those constraint entities to extract the algorithmic representations we need to share with ModelCenter, such that we can do the calculation. So you see the stopping distance algorithm in the constraint definition entity. We can also peruse the parametric diagrams within this model at the high level, as well as the individual constraint level. So all of this information helps us to construct the analysis for the braking system and its stopping distance that will go ahead and transfer over to ModelCenter. So invoking the Model Center wizard, it allows us to choose the scope of how much we want to export into Model Center. We're going to work with the full model. And then we have options to export the requirements, constraint definitions, and the components that are going to be involved in the analysis. So invoking Model Center, then we can use Model Center to peruse the systems model structure that was transferred over when we did the export. So we can see that there's a high degree of seamlessness that's been achieved here, and that the information that's in the GENESYS model directly constructs the systems model structure in Model Center. And then we have the analysis list that has come out of this constraint definitions. We have our vehicle brake analysis in there, and we can go ahead and run that analysis that we've exported over. And we can see that the stopping time and stopping distance has been calculated for us. So now jumping back into GENESYS under the vehicle parameters, we can see that the design values haven't been populated yet. So we want to go ahead and save those baseline values into GENESYS, and you can see that they then become populated there. Now, once we've done that, we want to be able to go ahead and save the actual analysis that we did in association with any decisions that we would make to close out verification requirements or analysis requirements that we had specified in the model. So we'll go ahead and save that off to enable us to then attach a documented by relationship to that to the specific constraint that drove that analysis. So we'll go ahead and fill out that documented by relationship, create that document entity, and then in that document entity, we will go ahead and use the external reference URL field to highlight the file where we saved the Model Center analysis to. So we'll go ahead and type in a short description here just to say, hey, this was the analysis of our stopping distance in that document entity that we're using to capture this. Then we can go and, for example, pick up the particular type of document that we're referencing here. So we'll call this a test and evaluation report. And now we've gone and we've actually captured that analysis result and the reference to it in the GENESYS model. So there's a strong example for how, as we move through the architectural design and analysis and decisions of trade-offs, we can capture the actual work we did in Model Center for the analysis and decisions of trade-offs we may have made in that architecture design. Again, this is a light touch on a fairly deep topic with some powerful features. So I'll just quickly summarize what the Model Center connector is capable of, in addition to what we just observed in the demonstration video. We began the analysis by pushing the whole model, where we could have chosen a subset of the model from GENESYS into Model Center. We can also push requirements to help define and expand the scope of the analysis. We can push the constraint definitions and corresponding mappings and avoid needing to do any manual recreation in Model Center based on that. And then we can optionally update parameter values in GENESYS based on the Model Center results. We do have the ability to store the Model Center analysis in association with GENESYS for documentation, review, and reuse, as we saw. We also have the ability to save the Model Center analysis model and alongside of the GENESYS model and restart ModelCenter with that, so we could come back later and redo or revise those analysis results. So we have that ability to save changes made in the ModelCenter once we go through that iteration, and we can save and restart any number of times from within Genesys. And then we can leverage the ModelCenter analysis server to do relevant requirement validation in Genesys as well. So it's a fairly robust set of features in this new connector. We're quite excited. Some of our users that have gotten a look at this have expressed strong interest in moving forward with some implementation workflows based on that. Okay, the next major topic in Genesys 7 is model and configuration management. What we've added in Genesys 7 is if you were to right-click on a package definition within the Project Explorer window, you'll see a new option in the pull-down menu for exporting that particular package and the entities that are included in that package. So here's an example from Geospatial, and we've got some number of requirements associated with that package. So we're going to go ahead and export those, and then when we import it, we can import it into a new project, and then what you'll see is only the particular entities that were called out in the package definition in the original project show up in the new project. So we're envisioning that this can be a powerful vehicle for defining requirements documents in the model, perhaps even maintaining the requirements documents going forward by the Genesys model. Some of our users are starting to take advantage of using Genesys in this way. And then all of those requirements in those requirements documents could be pulled into new projects without having to redo parsing or re-enter the requirement information. We have an additional capability with this to include context entities that are in the original project that might help describe to the user of the exported subset of the model how the model originally used those entities that were included in the package definition. So in this case, when you select the export function in the package pull-down menu, what you'll see is the option to include context entities in the report. So it defaults to no, as we saw in the prior example, but if you select yes, now you're going to get one context entity layer of surrounding those entities that are defined in the package. So in the case of that Command Center requirements package that we used earlier, we can see that we've also picked up the R.2 specific requirements because those were in relationship to some of the requirements that were included in the package definition. So I picked up a couple of additional requirements in the new project when I import what was exported. And then you can see that these refined by requirements for what were originally included have been carried over as they are related to that first layer of context entities. But the remaining relationships associated with R2 didn't come over because those entities were outside of that one context entity layer. So in the case of trying to save some reference models for best methods such as describing a data bus or best methods for describing a network, these types of reference models with the additional context entity layer could be very informative to the systems engineer trying to take advantage of them. Okay, some configuration management capabilities have been added into GENESYS 7. We now have the duplicate project feature added to the project ribbon. So when I select the duplicate project, I take advantage of a new project property, the version number that's down here at the bottom of the project property page. And when I hit the duplicate project button, I have the ability to perform a couple of different options. I can retain all permissions, shift to read only, remove permissions, and also clear out or carry over some baseline versions, audit logs, erase the history, etc. Now in here I've gone ahead and added version 1.0 to the version field when I created that duplicate project. Now I also have the ability to do extend baseline versions, and when I do the baseline versioning, I get a new wizard here that allows me to specify how I want to go about creating that baseline project. So I can do that at the revision level. I can do a variant, which is like a .01, or a new release, which is the main the main integer, or I can choose some customization of my numbering scheme. And again, I have some options when I create the baseline products to clear out the audit logs and control some permission levels, etc. Now the product modification stamp, the project modification stamp on the project properties page has gotten a slightly enhanced role now. Instead of being the last time that the project properties were changed, it's now going to track the last time the project itself has been changed. So it'll update with changes to the entity timestamp, any diagrams that are updated if the project properties have been changed, any baselining, purging of any interim attribute versions, a change to the schema, change the permissions. All those types of things will affect the timestamp for the project now. Okay, setting user alerts. This has been an asked for capability in GENESYS, so it's now available. We can we have a new capability up in the ribbon. So when we select any type of entity, folder, or package, we have the option to set alerts either from the new capability up in the ribbon, or in a right-click pull down on whatever's selected in the Project Explorer. So once I've set alerts, I can view them now down at the lower part of the Project Explorer. I'll see the notifications capability in the Project Explorer, that when I select that, I get the Notification Center. And the Notification Center has two tabs in it. If I select the following tab, then I will see all the user alerts I have set, whether they be set at the individual entity level, or at a folder level, or at a package level. I'll see them here. And then I can either select items in my in my following page in my Notification Center, and I can remove any that I've selected, or I can clear out all the notifications from within that following window. The other tab in the Notification Center is all of the actual notifications. So by selecting that Notifications tab in the Notification Center, any notifications that are pending for me, and I have some filtering options at the top to choose how I might want to view the notifications that are pending for me in in my work in Genesys. Okay, moving on to some additional capability we've added to the diagram frame block. So in the diagram frame block, we've greatly expanded control of how we'll populate those different fields in the diagram frame block. So I can control those in my preferences by going under project preferences and selecting diagram general, and I'll see this capability now where I can select various different field types based on and the associated specification and how that'll be actually displayed in the label. So I have quite a wide range of capability to choose from in that diagram frame block control. I'll just illustrate a couple here. If I were to have selected a field type of project property, then I'll get the list of including the name, organization, customer, or version number that I could pull out into the label. If I were to select a project property, there's a long list of different capabilities that I might want to choose from. If I could also look at entity properties to get a list of items to specify that. And then one thing that's been asked for in the project property is to be able to put the classified by specifications so that I can show the classification level of different documents under entity control in the diagram frame blocks. So quite a flexible array of customization capability in the by diagram, by frame block specification. We've made some usability enhancements in the spell checker. So now we can spell check at the entity folder, package, schema, or project level, and you can control the scope of that. So for example, if I were to select the constraint definition folder and then hit the spell check button, I would on the ribbon, I would be prompted to go ahead and check the spelling in everything in the folder called constraint definition. If I go into any description field and type something that's misspelled, for example, here I typed in double foo, you see a very familiar convention of the red squiggly underline highlighting the real-time spell check results. And then by right-clicking and selecting on that real-time spell check result, I'll get a menu that we're very familiar with from other types of word processing tools to correct that with something close or add it to the dictionary, etc. So nice enhancement to the spell check capability inside of Genesys. We've added some additional capability to the reporting toolkit. We've added the ability to report out on concerns that have been closed since some date or all open concerns. There's a cross-reference matrix capability so that we can see how different entities are related to each other in an XY cross-reference matrix fashion. We can also generate indented hierarchies of components or functions that are in a folder or package. And we've also added the capability to do an indented hierarchy of program elements in a folder or package so we can get a work breakdown structure style of representation. So you'll recall that the reporting toolkit is in the Project Explorer under the reports section, and the enhancements have appeared in the various reports that are in that toolkit. Here's an example of the cross-reference matrix report. This is actually pulled right out of the report description page that that comes up when you select the report properties tab. But here we can see how each different entity is highlighted so that we can see, okay, sys.1 geospatial library is associated with the request to product link. And so the X's indicate where the cross-reference relationships exist between those various entities. So that's a handy feature to get a quick look at how our different entities are connected to one another. The document parser can now auto-name entities. So down at the bottom of the parse document setup screen, you'll see some new options. One is to checkbox enable the auto naming of the entities, and then what the word count of the auto name phrase will be. So it triggers off of keywords that you specify, and in the description, when those keywords are found, the next X number of words will become the auto name for that particular entity. So looking at an example of that, you'll see that if I parse a document and have auto naming enabled, then I'll instead of getting requirements _001, which are not descriptive at all of the particular requirement, I use my auto naming capability, and here I keyed off the shell word in the description phrase and picked the next 5 words because I had selected 5, and that phrase that followed the shell keyword then became the name for the requirement. I can see that here in the property sheet as well as in the browser. So if you're doing parsing of requirements documents at the early stage of a new project, this would be a handy feature. Some additional usability features that have come with GENESYS 7. We have the ability to associate email addresses now in the different user and group specification under the project administrator control pages. We have some improved control over formatted text behaviors, so that when you're manipulating formatted text in different artifacts, report specifications you're creating, there'll be less of a misformatting of some of that formatted text in those documents. And it's also surfaced that in the establishment of cross-project relationships, we could use the flexibility to change project IDs and better enable the management of projects, of models that are involved in cross-project relationships. So we've added that capability to GENESYS 7 as well. And of course, you have to have project administrator privilege to modify those, but that's now available. So thanks for listening in. That's the summary of GENESYS 7. We've got some powerful features that have come out to enable much more concurrent and connected systems engineering throughout the product lifecycle in the form of the expanded analysis capabilities with ModelCenter and Simulink. And we've also added quite a bit of capability for configuration and model management as the different system designs are reused and shared and need to be managed across the enterprise. As well, we've added a nice list of usability features to GENESYS 7. So with that, I will wrap up the presentation form part of this webinar and leave some time for any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. We do have a few questions thanks to our participants. I encourage you to join the discussion now and submit your questions using your webinar control panel. If you do need to leave the webinar, please take a moment before you go to respond to the quick survey that will pop up on your screen. So our first question is from Julie. How do I get my license for 7.0?
Oh, that's very straightforward. You can contact the support desk for help, or go ahead and email either support@vitechcorp.com or licensing@vitechcorp.com. And we'll go ahead and coordinate with getting your updated license for Genesis 7.
Okay. Our next question is from Jim. When will 7.0 be available?
Genesis 7 is on the website as of Friday of last week, and you can find it by clicking on the software tab at the top right of the Vitech homepage, and that will guide you to the downloads for Genesis 7 install, as well as the variety of connectors associated with Genesis 7.
Okay. We do have a question from Daniel. Being in a multi-MBSE environment, I need to share data from Genesis with Cameo. How do I do that?
Well, that's a great question, Daniel, and unfortunately there's not a great answer for that. The models that are in Genesis have a much broader scope and are much more semantically strong than are easily represented in SysML v.1 and Cameo. And to date, the best interoperability is manually moving the diagrams and the entity definitions back and forth. We're hoping that as we work to achieve SysML v2, that we'll be able to increase the scope of what we can represent in SysML, as well as the semantic strength of it, so that we'll have much more portability between the various MBSE tools.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. That wraps up the final Q&A for today's presentation. If you have any other questions or comments for Mark, please don't hesitate to send him an email. You can see his email address on your screen now. Or you can post your questions and comments on our LinkedIn group page. Just visit linkedin.com and search for Vitech Corporation. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar. Remember that at the conclusion of this webinar, a survey will open on your screen. Please take a moment to give us feedback on today's presentation or on what topics you'd like to see covered in future webinars. Once again, thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day.